Hello, and welcome to Education Transformation, a brand new podcast coming to you in a brand new year, 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm your host, Alexandra McCare, and I'm extremely excited to be here and start this journey with you. Over the last 5 years, I've been implementing a transformative method of learning, and it has been met with immense success. When COVID-19 hit and the rest of the world went indoors, I started a journey of traveling the world, working with children and families from age 4 all the way up to age 16. And I can't say enough about how wonderful the experience has been. So the purpose of this podcast is to share those insights and to hear from industry leaders, experts in the field, practitioners. We also want to give this platform to parents and students where they can voice their experiences and thoughts and concerns. We have a whole host of topics ready to share with you, but before we dive into a little summary of things we're going to cover, I'd like to introduce to you my co-host and spouse, Joe.
Hey everybody. So over the past, I'd say 5 years, we've been working with this new model, and we want to share that with everybody through this podcast. I've been taking a more traditional stance in the classroom, trying to use some of the ideas from the model as best as possible, and we'll dive into that maybe later in this episode, but definitely in episodes to come. But today we're here to basically give you the overall idea.
Yeah, a little summary of the things we want to cover.
Some of the key benefits.
Throw out some of the names of the people whose practices and things that we've been learning from and using in our classrooms and with our students.
And an ultimate goal really to just transform the way that education is.
That's the big goal.
That's the ultimate goal.
The podcast here is to create that space so that we can ignite that conversation and get the dialogue going and have a place where people can tune in and hear.
Right. And how it's, we have plenty of success stories.
Yeah.
And also some failures along the way that,
oh, yes.
That we, can share with everybody which does work, what doesn't work. But really this is going to take
a collective effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For everybody to adopt, this model, and hopefully everybody can see that there's a better way.
I just want to chime in there and point out that collective effort is one of the tenets of the AME model.
AME, what is that?
Always Meaningful Education is a branch from the Always Meaningful brand. And yes, collective effort is one of the two big branches that we have in our framework. And the other is personal progress. So we really take that approach that we really want to help kids develop themselves and then develop how they are within a group. But we'll get more into that later. So let's talk a little bit about some of the topics we're going to cover in our podcast. Neuroscience, one of my favorites. I started a PhD program many eons ago about cognitive development and instruction, and I remember being in one of my first classes and I was blown away because I thought, why is all of this science, why is all of this research out there? It exists. Here I am in a classroom learning about things like hydrating the brain, like brain breaks, like the importance of movement, the cycles through which the brain learns and retains information, and none of that is what was being practiced in the classroom. So that's definitely set me off on a new path with regard to education. I wanted to know, why was there this dissonance, this separation between what science was proving to us as effective and what teachers were being told to do in the classroom. So yeah, and Jim Quick's one of my favorite people, so I'd love to chat with him on the podcast and others. But he's out there traveling around the world teaching people how their brains learn, how they can learn effectively, and those are the kinds of skills that our students should also be learning. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I'm not as well versed in that as you are, but just like when we are working in our everyday life, whenever we're doing anything, especially something that requires, great focus or attention, we always sometimes feel like we need a break or we need to stop. And that's one of the, the topics you said was like brain breaks and
yes.
hydrating the brain. I mean, making sure that it's working optimally is key.
Yes.
And often we don't see that enough in classrooms or at all.
Or at all. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So learning how the brain works is, I think, something that, every student would benefit from.
Yeah, kids should be learning how their brains learn. At least what science can tell us now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that is an ongoing field and a never-ending field. So we're always learning new things. We're getting new insights into neuroscience. And yet the classrooms are run from basically the knowledge we had 100 years ago. So yeah, I'm hoping to really share a lot about neuroscience and how kids benefit from learning it. It's a motivator. The students that have been in the AME model have had that foundation that where they are learning, this is how my brain learns. And so then it just makes sense for them. It makes sense for them to take a brain break, to take a drink of water, to schedule their learning so that they have 20 minutes, for example, of input and then some time to reflect before moving on to something else. All of those little pieces become intrinsic motivators for students to guide themselves in their learning journeys, which is another one of our tenets of which is lifelong learning. So yeah, and neuroscience plays a big part in that. Another one of our favorites is the growth mindset. Carol Dweck and her colleagues and many others now have been showing us through science that this simple shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset can have a really positive impact on students' approach to learning and their self-perception even.
What's the difference?
Well, in the fixed mindset, you're getting, for example, a grade, A, B, C, or D, and after you get it, then it's over. That's the end of it. So it's fixed. You can't go anywhere from there. In a growth mindset, you're measuring a progress of the student, right? So in a growth mindset structure, students are being informed about where they are in the process of learning. In a fixed mindset structure, they are being informed about how well they did on the beginning or the end of something. And so you can imagine, as a human, that just feels defeat, like you're defeated.
But if I get a C on this quiz and then I get a B on the next, is that fixed or is that growth?
That's still fixed because that's new material. It would be different if in schools we were giving students assessments and saying, "Oh, you can try this again," and maybe that happens every once in a while, but more often than not, it's a fixed mindset. Structure.
So maybe they could tie that in with the standards-based grading, where sometimes they get graded, on the standards, and they'll show up repeatedly. So maybe that's one of the benefits of some of the standard-based programs. But
could you explain that to me differently?
So in like a standards-based grades, your math test, you might be graded on. So.
Yeah, Joe's coming to you from the STEM side of school, so you're going to get a lot of math examples from.
No, the whole purpose is I have I understand it. I'm just trying to have everybody else.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yes.
So yeah, and like a standards-based grade, a lot of the steps you need to do the next one are in the second, let's say, assessment, and you get graded on each standard, as opposed to getting it right or wrong. So that might be, another way that they're showing growth, as opposed to the traditional format where it's just a grade from one test to the next. So
yeah, and some schools have adopted the scoring system where they use emerging developing.
That's just relabeling it, I think.
Well, yes, but that's the point of the growth mindset
Right.
people, that simple relabeling makes a big
Right.
difference, right? When you pass or fail versus you're developing or mastering, that is a different way to internalize,
Right.
the process. So, yeah. So,
But that's like, that could be a whole episode in itself,
Yes.
or several.
Well, several.
I mean, or it could be its own podcast.
Yeah, I think that
I'm sure there
all
is.
of these topics we could go on and go on and go on and go on, and we'll hopefully get a lot of feedback from the audience as well, and we'll dive deeper into the things that people want to dive deeper into. Another, I guess it's sort of a combined topic, which is curiosity and creativity, and these are two things that I'm very passionate about. The AME model is it springboards from curiosity.
I would say it's more the foundation almost.
It really is.
You could argue that it's the foundation because
it's the fuel for the learning process. Yeah, because we want kids to be curious, and we want them to know how to follow that curiosity to lead them on a learning journey. So curiosity is
and learning journey is something we'll dive into, at a later later point, and you'll see how with the model curiosity, where students have the autonomy to choose what they want to learn about, is kind of how
and the
how
autonomy to choose is even the next step, Joe, because the first step is just like actually going within and thinking, what do I want to learn about? What am I curious about? I mean, it seems like such a simple question, but that is not something students in schools are ever given the opportunity to answer,
Right.
What do you want to learn about? The want, the what is handed to them, it's fed to them. So that's another big part of the AME shift too. We wanted to step away from the what and go more into the direction of how. And to extend that, I'd say we moved away from what and when, saying this is what you have to learn at this age, and we moved to how and why. So students in this model are taking their natural curiosities and interests, and then they are going on that learning journey and figuring out how they can learn about those things and why it's important.
Yeah. And to sum it up, very quickly, we don't teach students what to learn, we teach them how to learn.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
Because the what is pretty much irrelevant or being phased out, now.
Because what is at our fingertips.
Yeah.
It's at our
information,
fingertips. It's at our fingertips. So it's really more about the process of learning and how do we learn. But I think we should keep in this removing when and adding why also, because we both recognize that that's a big issue. Saying that kids have to learn specific things at certain ages and then measuring whether or not they do well at that age is really detrimental to them. And maybe they're ready for that material a few years before, or who knows. But
what it is
what and when.
It's more about trying to teach the masses, and that's why it's that's why it's done, because if you're teaching that many students at a time, it's difficult. We'll get into that later.
Because that is a point that we could definitely debate a bit, because I think it can be done on a grander scale if we shift what we're valuing. Right. So Ken Robinson is the late Ken Robinson is a hero of mine in the field, and he was certainly an advocate for bringing creativity back into the forefront of education and the value of that. So that curiosity and creativity, those are just two of many things that have been sidelined by traditional education that we want to shift our values back towards them and help people understand why they're important and how they can actually be successfully incorporated into education. So so we really just want to come here and create a space to ignite this conversation and hopefully shift people's values towards the pursuit of lifelong learning, personal growth, and the collective effort. How can we teach kids to be in a group and as a group collectively achieve goals? I mean, these are the kinds of skills that are important to the future, which is a whole nother topic that we could get into, which is the antiquated nature of the skills that we are giving kids 12 years of time to develop. imagine 12 years of your life, developmental years. Imagine if you could spend them really finding out what you like, what you do well, learning systems for measuring your own progress, setting your own goals.
And you say what you do well. So most of us can remember from school that topics are often, reintroduced or recovered from 6th grade to 7th grade. I'm speaking mostly from, as a math teacher, how you often, how many years do you teach fractions and then, you have to learn it again and again and again. And we found that it's so much more effective to do something, meaningful. Meaningful, yes, but let's do 3 things extremely well instead of doing 6 or 8 things, half-assed.
Over and over again. But yes, I agree with that point a lot. But I would go even further to say that when you tie that learning into a meaningful task,
of course,
then which is going back to neuroscience, when there's emotional involvement, when the body's involved, when when all so many things are put together, and you're approaching learning with all of that, it's going in, it's going deeper, it's going into long-term memory, it's having more impactful. So being meaningful, that's where the name comes from anyway. Always.
And I think maybe because we don't really have it all totally planned out, but maybe the next episode we can just walk everybody through a learning journey so that they can see all of the different steps and how it's been so effective.
It's a great idea.
With
and how we tie some of these topics in.
Yeah, and it'll really make come full circle, and hopefully that will spark some curiosity and bring some attention to that there's a better way. There's a better way than is being done.
And why is that important now? I know we talked about maybe bringing this up later, but I feel it's not just because it's a new year, but there's a lot of change afoot in the world right now, and certainly in the United States, there's a big shift in the direction of education. So we also felt like this was...
Well, there's been talk about it. So there's been talk about
fair.
it.
There's been talk. That's true.
And we've always heard about talk. So let's hope. Let's hope that whoever is going to be in charge of that is.
Okay, I'm not sure we needed to point out that it was only talk so far, but
well, it hasn't started yet. We're
it's
only at the first of the year.
That's why we felt like the podcast is the timing is really great now, because there's a very good possibility that there's going to be people looking for ways to make changes, and possibly big changes. So that's why the platform is really vital to now. So that's why we also want teachers, we want the experts, we want parents and even students to join us in this effort, to join us in this education transformation effort. Here's our chance, here's a platform, here's the time. We have the tools, we've got the way to access masses of people. So